You are.
Madame Muscardini.
Well, I'd quickly like to say that Europe and its citizens need a president for their development. And that person needs a mandate of several years. In the Lisbon Constitution, 2.5 years is suggested. And that is needed because the current term of 6 months isn't long enough to get results on some of the problems we have to solve. The other problem is that there's no provision for a commissioner from each member state. I have tabled amendments on this subject, and now we will have a commissioner from each member state. It's not a problem of national representation, it's a question of giving our newest members and their citizens a higher profile, enabling them to better identify themselves with the EU.
Monsieur Daul.
Écoutez, je suis un Alsacien, donc l'Europe nous a apporté 60 années de paix.
Well, I'm from Alsace, so Europe has given us 60 years of peace. Europe protects us without protectionism, which is worth underlining. Europe is reassuring, and it's the EU's founding fathers who got us to where we are today, with 60 years of peace and enlargement achieved in a war-free continent. Oh, very well, Mr. Farage, if you want a war, go ahead. When I look around me at today's European citizens, it only increases the respect I have for the EU's founding fathers. It's lucky they were around, not more people like you. If that had been the case, we would have been at war all the time. So I believe that when I explain to my children and grandchildren today with my colleague Martin Schulz when we crossed the frontier what the situation was like 40 or 50 years ago, that's what Europe means. So for all those who don't feel comfortable in Europe, Mr. Farage, in the new Lisbon Constitution there's a paragraph that says anyone who feels out of place can leave. That's not in the Nice Treaty. If you feel out of place, vote for Lisbon and you can leave the next day. That's provided for in the Constitution, Mr. Farage.
I'd rather leave before Lisbon, thank you very much.
Is your blanket no to the European Union and its treaties linked to a purist conception of market economies and a totally free market?
À faveur du marché, de la liberté des marchés.
I firmly believe that we're part of a global economy, not a European economy, and I watch what these institutions are doing within the EU, and we're not fit for a global economy given the social market model that we're building through the institutions of the European Union.
Are you a free marketeer when it comes to jobs? What do you think of the protests we've seen in many countries, not only in Britain, where workers have called for a nationalist defence of their employment?
I think that to open your borders to people from very poor countries in Eastern Europe and to say to them, as many of you as want to come can, is insane. And we should operate a proper work permit system.
We get this all the time from him in the European Parliament. He's very skillful and we discuss things with him. I prefer to discuss solutions or legislation designed to protect, for example, jobs, the environment, or ways of tackling the financial crisis. And on these subjects, Mr. Farage never contributes a thing.
Europe now finds itself in a position where there are different visions of its future. There are some who look at the multilateral challenges ahead and say it's time to raise the drawbridge. In other words, keep the EU as a white Christian club with restricted contacts with the outside world. Others, almost all the political groups in fact, are in favour of an open Europe, engaged with the rest of the world, with a dialogue with the Muslim world and others, in commerce, to promote the ideas of freedom, democracy and human rights.
Commerce pour promouvoir les valeurs de la liberté, la démocratie, le respect des droits de l'homme.
It is this vision of Europe that has to mobilise a coalition so we can progress.
Monica Frassoni, would you like to conclude?
I think this crisis is also a stroke of luck, however tragic and dramatic for many. It allows us to say we were wrong, we must try something else. I think that with the Treaty of Lisbon things will improve, but but without it we can still do it. We must release at a European level guaranteed capital for green investments, for education and training, green jobs, and for those who are able and want to embark on new ventures. I think this is a stimulus that the EU can provide, but to do it, and let's be clear on this, we need a new majority to the one currently in place in the European Parliament. So our citizens need to understand that here in the European Parliament we are fighting over a range of different options that are published and transparent so they can choose. And this is exactly what Mr. Farage doesn't want to admit exists. This is a democracy, but alas for him, it's a European democracy. It's certainly not yet complete, but I deny the possibility you can only have democracy on a national level. It's just not true.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, everyone.